Hello duelists, it's Tombox here for the part 2 of the Zoodiac in-depth profile, this time featuring the Eidolons, or the Invoked. Now if you haven't seen part 1 yet, please check it out, it's in the description below, you can get the link right there. And if you like kaijus and stuff like that, that's the one that you want to go to, and I'll explain more of the Zoodiac stuff in that video. So if you haven't checked it out already, please do so. But for now, we're going to focus on Zoodiac's interaction with the Invoked. Alright, so straight into the deck profile now. In the previous video, I did mention that Zoodiac engine can come in multiple sizes, and in this case, we're using the smaller engine, so we can fit more of the Invoked stuff. So starting off with triple Momorat and double Viper. No need to explain these guys. Summoning engine, the entire engine is based off of Momorat. Viper is your damage slash utility. And then moving on to the monsters of the Invoke size, we have Alistair, the Invoker Summoner. Alistair is very interesting. Of course, he is the key card to fusion summoning any of your Invoked beast. So during either player's turn, of course, you can discard this guy to target one of your fusion monster that you control and then let it gain 1000 attack and defense. So basically, it's a little Kalut, or Honest, if you will. But when you normal summon this card, or it's flip face up, so it's kind of like Blue Boy, you can add one Eidolon or invoke summoning magic from your deck to your hand. So the moment you summon this card, you get your fusion spell. Very key to the entire deck, and he does require normal summon, so that's why you kind of cut down on the tanky stuff. You also have Photon Thrasher at 3, mainly because he is a light attribute, and he's also a level 4, and he's also a body. I'll get more into that later. And now for your hand traps, we have a pair of Maxis and triple Ghost Ogre. Ghost Ogre is very important because it is also a light attribute, and that can go into Merkaba, your light invoked monster. Now into the spells, for the Zoodiac stuff, we have triple Elemental Triangle and one copy of Tenki down here. That's it. Mainly because you need your normal summon for Alistair in most cases. So we cut down on the tanky, but you still want to open it with a Rad, because if you actually can't complete your engine properly, because you're actually running about 2 decks right now, if you can't start off one side properly, especially if you don't have an Alistair and a light, then you would prefer to start with the Zoodiac stuff, so therefore you still have that tanky available. Next up, we have the Field Spell. This Field Spell is amazing. One of the central cards to why this deck is super consistent. It's Reckless Magic Circle. Reckless Magic Circle, when you activate it, it's kind of like Union Hanger, you get to search a card, so you get to search Alistair the moment you activate the Reckless Magic Circle. It also has a continuous effect of basically protecting your fusion summon. So when you activate a fusion, a card that would, or an effect that would cause a fusion summon of a fusion monster, well, the activation of that card cannot be negated, so you cannot Solemn Warning the card. However, just because you cannot Solemn Warning doesn't mean you can't chain stuff to prevent the summon. Now, another thing about this card is, when that monster is fusion summoned, so when the fusion summon is successful, nothing can be activated, in response to that. In other words, you have one window of opportunity to stop this, which is you can use a D barrier, you can use Vanity's Emptiness to prevent the monster from coming out from the summoning magic, but you cannot negate that, and once the monster comes out, basically it's a done deal. Of course, because this card is really great, we also run triple Terraforming. Triple Terraforming, very important, kind of like how ABCs depend on Union Hanger. Although they don't really depend on Reckless Magic Circle, but it does act as a Rhoda towards our Spellcaster monster, Alistair. And if you think about how strong opening with the Terraforming is, you activate Terraforming, you fetch this, that's one card out of your deck, and then you activate Reckless Magic Circle, you fetch another card, and you activate Alistair, and now you fetch an Invoke Summoning Magic. So that's basically 4 cards out of the deck just from playing 1. Pretty insane. And of course we have our Invoke Summoning Magic, or Eidolon Summoning Magic. I don't really have the full translations yet. This card allows you to fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand as fusion material. However, if you're going to summon an invoked fusion monster, you can banish monsters from your field or either player's graveyard as fusion material. So it kind of works like a DD Pro per se. You can kind of like a graveyard super poly, if you will. You can use their material to do so. And the whole invoked archetype basically is multiple attributes, so different attributes contribute to different things, similar to how Shadows get out different fusion monsters depending on the attribute that you fuse with. You run a pair of Instant Fusion, not just for Norden, you also have Raideen or Raijin, depending on how they renamed it. You have one copy of Tenki, of course mentioned before, for the Momorat. A pair of Chalices, because you want to be able to have that spot removal. You know, Vandy's Fiends kind of suck. You know, Raigeki, kind of same deal, breaking boards, so you can actually make your play. Because right now, in terms of how I tuned my variant of this deck, is that I want to be able to play first or second. So being able to break a board, or even able to set the Chalice to prevent my opponent from activating effects, very, very crucial. Pair of Twin Twisters. Why not Cosmic Cyclone? Honestly, you can switch Twin Twisters between Cosmic Cyclone if you want. My case is, because I can fuse with the graveyard, so Twin Twister doesn't exactly have a full cost, although I am still very scared of Artifact Scythe to prevent me from accessing my extra deck, so these might not be the best choice, but for now, I'm still testing with the Twin Twister because I like the extra removal, or perhaps the end phase flip to pop stuff. That's also very nice. Of course, for my trap lineup, I have Triple Strike and a Triple D-Barrier, just because D-Barrier is basically pay $80 to end your opponent's turn, so that is great. And then they have Solemn Strike, because you don't want them to be able to summon or activate their effects, since the format is becoming very monster-centric. Now, this is my extra deck here. Now, the extra deck will change depending on how well the ban list could hit this deck per se. But for now, I do have one copy of Norden in here because instant fusion targets are amazing. Now, starting off with the Earth Eidolon Beast, or the Earth Invoked Beast, we have Magellanica. Basically a vanilla Blue Eyes, 3000 attack, but with a stronger defense, 3300 defense. No effect, just requires Alistair and an Earth. Now for the Wind Fusion, Alistair and a Wind, we have Raideen or Raijin, depending on how they rename the card. Once per turn, during either player's turn, you can target one face-up monster on the field and change it to face-down defense position. So you have a quick effect Book of Moon on him. Stat line's not too bad, 2200 attack with 2400 defense. So stronger defense, again. But this card, if you combine it with the actual boss monster of the deck, we have Merkaba. Merkaba requires Alistair and a light monster, hence why you want the Photon Thrasher and all the Ghost Ogres in the main deck, although Ghost Ogres are really good in that format. Once per turn during either player's turn, when a spell, trap card, or monster effect is activated, you can send one card from your hand of the same type, so monster spells or traps, into the graveyard, negate the activation, and then banish the card. So it's an Ultimate Providence that banishes the card. Of course, it is a spell speed too, so if an Ultimate Providence is actually activated, you can't respond to that. You can't respond to counter traps. But overall, this is still once per turn very good. And we have Elder Entity Norden, because instant fusion target, very nice. And for your Zoodiac stuff, you have one Borbo, double Drancia, double Tigress, double Broad Bull, and then you have a pair of Daigusto Emerald and a Castell. Castell is a very interesting choice. Usually people can switch this in and out. Perhaps you can even lower your Tigress count if you want to fit more other stuff in here. Now, if Norden does get knocked off in the ban list, what would you do with this deck? I mean, your instant fusion count would go down, but don't forget, Raideen or Raijin can actually be instant fusioned out as a Book of Moon for whatever spot removal you require it to have, because it is a level 5. Now, if this is removed, one suggestion would be to add an additional copy of Magellanica, just because you're going to be facing off against a lot of Zoodiac decks, and having the extra access to a 3k body could push for additional game, or you can ruin some more combo. But the reason why people really like using this deck is because playstyle kind of varies depending on whichever deck that you're playing against. So aside from the Zoodiac playstyle of maintaining control over your opponent, the Invoked archetype is a fusion-based archetype that uses multiple attributes, similar to Shaddoll. So depending on what you fuse with Alistair, you can come up with a different fusion summoned monster. Now the playstyle is very, very grindy and it can probably outgrind most other decks. The reason for that is because the Invoke Summoning Fusion spell card, whenever you activate it, it goes to the graveyard and it does banish your Alistair if it is on the field or in the graveyard. However, when it's in the graveyard effect allows it to retrieve Alistair from the banishment and shuffle itself back into the deck. Therefore, you'll always have that play available to you. Especially during the late game, where your opponent has stuff in their graveyard too, you can start using your opponent's graveyard to start fusion summoning out some of your monsters. So now for your fusion lineup, you have for your light, you have Merkaba, which is the ultimate Providence, 2500 attack. Your beat stick and your boss monster of the deck can negate anything depending on what they activate, and as long as you discard, or not discard, but send a card of the matching type to the graveyard, you can negate it and banish it. So he's very crucial to the deck. You run 2 copies of him. And for your other ones, you have Megalonica, which is your 3k beat stick with a 33k wall. He's basically your earth, so match with the Zoodiacs, you have a powerful beat stick to push for damage, and Zoodiacs normally lack damage, so this guy can really push for game if you really need him to. Now we also have Raideen or Raijin, the wind one, which you use your Wind Xyz monster as a fusion material. This guy is basically a Book of Moon during either player's turn. 2200 attack, 2400 defense. See, all these stat lines are much higher than the Zoodiac stuff, so if you don't have the damage of the Zoodiac, these guys are your main damage pushers, because you no longer run the Gagaga Samurai. Now for other guys, you have Purgatorio, which is the fire fusion. Normally you can't really use them because you don't actually have access to them, but in a Metalfoe matchup, you can use the Metalfoe stuff because they are fire, and if they do leave one in the graveyard, this card is extremely punishing towards those players because, first of all, he pierces and he attacks all monsters. So Zoodiacs aren't known for having high defense, of course, and if they leave a Gofu or something silly like that, it can hit everything, and also gains attack based on the number of cards your opponent controls. For the Dark and the Water, the Dark one we have Caligula. Not a very strong monster per se, but it is like an effect version of Winda where your opponent, well basically everyone can only activate 1 effect per turn. Stat line's really low, 1000 attack, 1800 defense, but it does kind of ruin the turn a little because you're probably going to be doing things out of order, and of course we have Casitas. This guy is a 1800 attacker with a 3k wall, cannot be targeted or be destroyed by card effects by your opponent, and then it can attack in defense mode using the attack stat, of course. That's kind of interesting. Kind of annoying to get rid of too. But having a full variety of cards, there's also Elysium. Normally people sometimes side don't really play it. I can't remember the effect off the top of my head. Please just check it out. It's definitely one of the more difficult ones to summon for sure. The deck's main monster, Alistair the Invoker. He's basically a 1-card combo, and what makes this deck kind of insane, similar to the level of ABCs per se, is the field spell, Reckless Summoning Magic. Because it is able to fetch you about 4 cards in that line of play, from the Terraforming to the Reckless Magic Circle, to the summoning of Alistair, to Alistair retrieving the Invoker Summoning Magic, that's 4 cards with playing 1 card, and that really thins out your deck. And with the self-recovery that comes from the fusion spell, that's pretty insane. And in other words, if you play the Zoodiacs to control the early game, and then you can use the Eidolons to control the late game and kind of grind it out against your opponent, it is a very difficult matchup. And with the amount of control that they both offer, both engines are control-based. So it becomes a bit more difficult to play against these guys if they get their setup properly. Now I'm going to show you some combos. For the very first combo, I'm going to demonstrate the ideal opening hand, which is you have access to your Reckless Magic Circle, you have special summoning of the Rat, and you have a light monster. This could be a Ghost Ogre, so in this case I'm not going to special summon it, and in some cases I probably don't want to special summon it because I want it in the graveyard. But if you do special summon it, you do gain an additional plus, but you burn more resources. I'll explain that later. Starting off with the Reckless Magic Circle into the field spell zone, searching off your Alistair into your hand, which is good. Activate Elemental Triangle, this pop itself to give myself a nice Momrat in defense mode. Okay, in this case I'm not going to summon this one for sure, so now I'm going to normal summon this Alistair and search myself my summoning magic. From here I basically go into the exact same combo as before. Where it is going to be Orbo into Tigress, detach. Let's fast forward this because if you haven't seen this already, it's in the previous video. Okay, now that we're done summoning out our standard Zoodiac combo, let's finish it off with the Eidolon stuff or the Invoke stuff by playing the Summoning Magic. Because I'm banishing the field monster because they only can banish the field monster. And you can also send this to the graveyard from hand. So anything from hand will go to the graveyard. Anything from field or grave will get banished. Now because we did use a light monster, we're going to be summoning up Merkaba. And this goes to the grave. Now we're not done here. Now we activate the Invoke Summoning Magic, putting it back into the deck. And then we add ourselves Alistair back to our hand. This is a pretty decent field, I would say. So in this case, we have a spell negation, a monster negation, a monster pop, and that's still very solid. Now, okay, so for the second combo here, we're going to show you how to use Alistair and Photon Thrasher to establish your Momorat combo, and yeah, basically why this opening is actually still pretty strong. So starting off, we're going to special summon the Photon Thrasher. Now, Photon Thrasher is summoned, and now we normal summon out the Alistair. Alistair's effect will give us a search to the Invoker Summoning Magic. Now you overlay the two into Broad Bowl. Now that you have Broad Bowl, you can detach either piece really. I'm going to start off with the light, detach the light here, and give myself a search for the Momorat. So that's part one. Now I'm going to overlay on top of the Broad Bowl into Borbo. Okay. And on top of that, I'm actually going to use my once per turn summon of Broad Bowl. And now I'm going to use this to detach the second piece here, which has to be the Alistair. Preferably you go for the Alistair right here. And now I'm going to search myself a Viper. Okay. Now that I got the Viper, I activate my Summoning Magic, banishing out my Light and Dark. So my Alistair and my Photon Thrasher. So these guys are gone. And I summon out my Merkaba. Now from here, this is the part that gets a little bit more interesting, is that you activate Viper to target the Broad Bowl. However, you chain Merkaba, ditching your own Momorat to negate it. So this will get banished. And now the Momorat's in grave. You go into your next piece, Tigress. You go detach for Tigress to re-add the Momorat. And now you can detach the Borbo. And you can start summoning out your rats. So you put out one rat. Now you go into, I believe, Drancia. And you detach for Drancia using Momorat's effect, of course. A second Momorat. Now you can overlay into Digestor Emerald. Detach Digestor Emerald. Target these three. I'm not sure if you want to get back the Broad Bowl, mainly because, sure, you don't have a single copy left. However, there's nothing much left to search in the deck, so it's up to you. In this case, say I do go with the Broad Bowl, so I shuffle this back in, these two back in, and basically give it a good shuffle, and then you'll draw one card. However, you're not done here. The reason why I didn't activate my Summoning Magic yet is because I do not want to draw into it for one thing, and now activate this to shuffle it back into the deck to add myself my Alistair back to hand. So the combo will finish you off with a Drancia, an Emerald, and a Merkaba, starting off with only Alistair and a Photon Thrasher.
Alright, so as strong as this deck may be, if it gets the engine started and the versatility of the deck, there are weaknesses in this deck. Starting off with the most obvious one, the field spell. This deck, if you are reliant on the field spell to open your play, let's just say a single MST can throw a wrench into that whole plan, because the field spell can only be activated once per turn. So if it's negated, great, you can activate a second copy if you have it, but if it's been destroyed and couldn't resolve properly, it has still activated, therefore your combo is busted. Your turn is basically busted. And similar to ABC not being able to fulfill a Union Hanger, that clause is very crucial to actually balancing this deck. Next up, Artifact Scythe will shut your deck down completely. Being a double archetype that both rely on the extra deck, Artifact Scythe will completely cut you down when it comes to giving you access to your extra deck. And without the access to your extra deck,
you're basically just a bunch of sitting ducks. Zoodiacs can't play because, well, you can't access your Zoodiac Exceeds, nor can you play your Fusion Summon. Now, because the Fusion Summon is the more important part, a dimensional barrier hitting Fusions technically hurt more than hitting your Exceeds, because you don't have the damage that comes from the Zoodiacs anymore, and your engine is smaller, so your maximum damage that you can actually establish with your Zoodiacs is only 24. And DD Crow actually might throw a whole wrench in your Fusion Summoning, mainly because if you activate the Fusion spell, you're forced to resolve the effect of it, regardless of what monster that comes out. So if your light target is in the graveyard and your opponent DD Crows that, if you have if you have your Jancy on the field and that's the only other target you have, well, be prepared to basically get that banished and summon out a Magalonica, even though that's not your ideal target, because Magalonica is of course a vanilla. You might go into Raijin if you already set up your Daigasto Emerald, but you're not going to be going into your Merkaba, which is the one that you want to sit on the field. And another interesting factor about this deck is the bricking factor. There is a brick factor of this deck. No matter how consistent a deck is, Zoodiac, super consistent engine, it's nice and compact, but you also have the big engine of the Invoker stuff. And the Invoker set here, this archetype, requires you to have another attribute to go with it. If you only open Alistair, only open like a bunch of back row plus the field spell, that doesn't exactly help your case. You get your normal summon, you add your spell, and then your turn basically ends. So you have poor opening hands as well, and they're very punishable. But with dimensional barriers and everything, you can control that so that you gain your turn back. Of course, dimensional barrier being probably the strongest trap of the game, I would say, in the coming format. That basically covers up most of the weaknesses that I can think of. If you guys have more weaknesses to add or other playstyles or other plays about this deck that you would like to share with everyone, please leave it down in the comment section below. I would love to read your thoughts. And I guess that basically covers this video. So until next time, don't forget to check out my other videos as well. If you like this video and want to see more stuff from MST.TV, click on the left side to subscribe to us and throw us a thumbs up. And if you want to see our Zoodiac live match, Eidolon versus Kaiju matchup variants, click on the right video box here. And if you want a free Stratos, hit the notification bell. As always, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.